For me, if you're an egg, it's very easy to roll this way along the ground. It's if you're physically, this is a very unstable motion. It's actually kind of in my game. It also is the case that it's actually very difficult to just stand on your tip. It's very unstable. It doesn't want to stay there. So I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to go near that.
This is Steven, the dev behind the studio Increpare. The reason he was playing with his egg in front of you just now is because we were talking about his recently released game Oeuf, a platformer where you're an egg, as well as the game Egging On, a platformer where you're also an egg, as well as the game called Egg, a platformer where you, once again, are an egg. Honestly, if someone told me there were three 3D platformers headlining eggs, it's not that I wouldn't believe it. We're talking about games after all. Eventually, you learn to expect anything, not to mention that the fundamental tension conjured by making an object synonymous with fragility pull off extreme sports stunts is attractive from a creative standpoint, but I can't help but be fascinated that they actually exist and came out relatively close to each other, with the fourth one called Egbert on the way at that. Now, I can't confidently call this an emerging trend in the 3D platforming space, especially now that I know what the actual inspiration for Oof was. Digging into each game was still a really good exercise in seeing how different devs took vastly different approaches to what was basically the same general premise. For example, despite these all being about eggs, not each takes the actual shape of an egg into account. The egg and egg hobbles around almost like a penguin, with a lot of attention from its platforming stemming from its approach to jumps. Rather than a simple button press or a double jump, it's more akin to charging a shot and gauging how much power is needed for each leap. In contrast, Oof and Egging On have more traditional jump mechanics, but the object's shape matters much more. The former's approach forces players to be more considerate about their approach to jump, since being on the wrong end of an egg can seriously affect momentum and landing. In the latter's case, which end of the egg you jump from changes whether or not you're performing a low or high jump, and that massively affects how you plot the climb to the top. And these are just a few of the ways that subtle design decisions can lead to massively different play experiences. And to dive into more of those differences, I sat down and chatted with Steven from Increpare about his game Oof. We discussed his journey as a game developer and how it led to making a platformer featuring an egg, his thinking about platformer difficulty, encouraging players to keep going on even after cracking a hell of a lot of eggs, how Roblox games of all things influence Oof's development in a major way, and much more. And last but not least, if you like what you see or hear, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more games coverage like this, and don't be afraid to leave a comment either should any of the things that we talk about with eggs, platformers, or other video games related things come to mind. Thanks for hanging out. Without further ado, here's the interview. Thank you for joining me today, Steven. Before
Thank you
we
very
get
much.
into talking about your game Oof, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, by the way. Is it Oof?
I just say oof.
Oof?
That's not the French pronunciation, but that's how it ended up.
What is that French pronunciation?
I don't speak French. I think it's more like oof.
Oof.
But
Oof. Someone will definitely correct this at some point in the comments, but I appreciate it
yeah.
regardless. But before we get into your game, can you please tell us a little bit about your journey as a game developer? Where'd you start, and how'd you end up making a game that's headlining an egg?
Okay. So let's see. When I was a kid, I liked the idea of making games, and I was learning to code and made a couple of games then. And then I was going to university, and I stopped, and I was studying maths. Sorry, and I was like, the last thing I would ever want to do is to spend my life working with computers every day. So I sort of forswore everything to do with computers for a couple of years, and then one of my classmates was a big fan of game design, and he's Terry Kavanagh,
Of
and
course.
he was getting into it, and he was always into it. But then when he finished up, he had a job in a bank, and he was like trying to finish the VVVVVV, and then I was trying to do a post grad, and my post grad was going terribly, but I was really enjoying getting back making games, and so that was going really well. And so when the post grad just yeah, it stopped, and then I went to work for I was like, let's do games. So I went to work for a games company in Scotland for a year, and then thankfully for me, I was doing like UI work. The game I was there for the last year of like a 5 or 6 year, maybe even a longer project, and
Okay.
the game got released, and it didn't do well, and the company basically went into bankruptcy,
Mm.
which was probably good for me because I'm not the sort of person who would normally like quit a job to do some sort of bold thing of going indie. But the company went bust, and then Terry was like, "Hey, let's move to Cambridge in the UK and let's get a house." And we got another game developer, Sophie Holden, and we just hung out there for a year or two. That was a really good city for indie games. There was a really good scene there.
What made that
And
scene so
then
special, if you don't mind elaborating on that for a second?
oh, hoo, hoo, hoo. Um, ho, ho, ho. So there are. Can I just say this? Yeah, I'll just say this. It's us. There's a bunch of games companies there, and and at that point, I think they weren't doing that well, and they were kind of bleeding out people, and so there were lots of people like who were trying to follow their dreams, and
Gotcha.
there was just generally, and there were also like there were good games companies there, right? There were good games companies like Jagex is there and Frontier. They're the main two companies, and a couple of others as well. So there was just like, and then you have the universities as well. So there were just lots of people hanging out there for a couple of years, and then
Nice.
it kind of just diffused a bit, and people just moved to other cities. And then I was in London for a little bit, and then I moved to Germany, where I've been for the past 7 or 8 years now, working on games.
Oh, okay.
Um, that's more biography than game specific.
No, it's okay. Hey, the game is just about as much as you as it is about itself, so it's important to hear this biography. Um, but now that you mentioned Terry, who's someone we'll be talking a little bit about during this interview as well, because the inspiration behind this interview was eggs, specifically all the egg platformers. I feel like I'm noticing between your game Oof or Oof, as someone I'm sure will
Yeah,
tell us, Terry's recent egg game that came out towards the end of last year, and then Egging On that came out earlier. Seems like
yeah.
everyone's just wanting to mix and match 3D platformers, 3D physics platformers, and eggs. So, focusing specifically on your game, what was the inspiration behind making an egg the headliner for a platformer? And just why do you think that's starting to become a trend, if we could even call it a trend? You know, once cool, twice coincidence, three times pattern, four times, as there's another game that you showed me earlier that was called
Right.
Egbert, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just what's
Yeah.
up with that?
That's I guess it's yeah, like okay, so egging on, my understanding is it's been quite successful. So maybe people are like, oh yeah, it's a nice get people thinking about this, but I don't know. Like, I didn't know about egging on when we started this.
Okay.
So what happened was Terry was visiting Berlin for a games festival called Amaze for a week, and we were hanging out, and we're like, let's do a game jam, and let's pick a theme. And we had just been to an egg restaurant for breakfast, so we said, let's have. And we're just thinking of like, what's a theme that will definitely you'll definitely get something from it, right? It's not going to be a challenging theme. It's just like just do something with an egg. So we did something with an egg, and um, though the actual so we both made games about eggs, but we also both made 3D platformers. And the background for this is that we were both for a lot of last year under the spell of a Roblox game called Abyss World. It's just a really good
Mm.
3D environmental platformer, where its gimmick is like the core mechanic is the sort of the jump killing king style thing. So you go somewhere, you hold down the jump button, and when you release it, the height you spring forward, and the strength of your spring is how long you held the button for.
Okay.
And it's just this really, 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 really good game. And so we were both in 3D platformer mindset, and the egg thing was kind of incidental, but so he was like, "Yeah, I'll do variable jump height," and I was like, "I don't want to step on your toes. I also want to do a 3D platformer with an egg, but maybe I'll go physicsy." And we both sort of developed in that way. There was one other commonality where it's like if you're making an egg game, eggs are fragile, so you want the egg to go splat. And we both had this, and we both kind of abandoned it as a core mechanic. Um,
Oh, wait. So this was meant to be a core mechanic. Mechanic how? Or what was the
Well, like
initial thinking
if
there?
right. So if you have an egg, like what's the egg? What are the characteristics of an egg? And for a lot of people, number one is that an egg cracks very easily.
Right.
Right. You can talk about the shape of an egg or chicken nest stuff, but the number one egg quality of an egg is that it breaks if you mishandle it. And so we both, I think, had this pretty as a core part of the game. Like I think even Terry was doing the thing, and I think I've seen this in another game as well, maybe a 2D egg platformer where your max height jump by default it kills you, right? If you jump up and die, you die, and that's a good gag, right? It means you can go uphill, but you can't go far.
Right.
But I don't know, like what? How do you feel about fall damage in games generally? It's kind of tricky, right?
Fall damage in games to me is very tricky, and I go back and forth on whether it's something someone's including because that's just what people get used to, or if there's a purpose to it. This is gonna be a wild example because it has nothing to do with platformers. But I recently played the game Paradise Killer. 2020 came out in 2020. It's like a detective mystery game from Kaizen Games Work, and you do a lot of jumping around in that game to solve the mystery. Like half of the time, I felt like I was playing a parkour game from the way I was moving, but there was noticeably no fall damage, and to me, that kind of served a purpose in showing not just the power of the protagonist as like a semi-immortal person. There's a lot going on in this game, but it makes sure that the focus of what you're doing stays on the mystery because there's no health or anything involved in that game. It's just like, oh, you can fall, you can go anywhere. And it made traversal in of itself very easy because you're not worried about that bit. When
Yeah.
you go to, actual 3D platformer game that I played recently, Big Hops from Luckshot Games. It was a great 3D platformer. It was really fun. Its whole gimmick was you're just frog hop using your tongue to like swing from places. You could do a Breath of the Wild style climbing on anything. There's really sharp platforming going on there, but it also had no fall damage, interestingly enough. You could still fall to like an abyss or like a cavern or something like that and like restart. And there was help there if you got hit by like, and not even an enemy per se, but like hit a hazard object or something like that. But the choice of having no fall damage there, despite being a platformer, made traversal feel like a dream. Like it made me not even worry about where I was jumping. It made me take more risk in my jumps as well because of how easy it was to get back to a place. So when it comes to fall damage, it's to me, I don't really care whether or not it's there so much as what's the purpose of it? What are you trying to tell me by having fall damage
Yeah.
exist? What about you? Like you having made a 3D platformer where fall damage
Right.
is incredibly important, to be honest. What's your thinking there?
Uh, so, um, right. So originally, I have a physics game. So you have an egg, and I was like, okay, if you hit a surface with more than a certain speed, it should splat you. However, technically, it's kind of tricky with physics games. It's hard to keep everything under control. So that, and also, if you're spinning really fast, does that count as are you moving or not? What happens? And it wasn't something I could control very well. And I wanted it to be like, as a game designer, you want to be able to rely on certain things. Or
Right.
at least in this game, I did. And so I was like, okay, I'll just put in like kill zone. So if you enter this kill zone, then if you hit a surface, you just die. The next surface you hit kills you. So I was doing these kill boxes, Dark Souls style, and it was okay. Like I was like, I'm gonna put them everywhere. And this is also where I decided to call the game Oeuf, right? So for people who don't know, there's if you play Roblox and you die, your character goes Oof. And so this is a sort of a 3D platforming cliche. And I was like, that's like the French word for egg. I'll call the game Oof, which was also the name of the
Nice.
restaurant. I'm planning to go back there with Terry for a maze this year and tell them tell them everything that's happened over the past year. And so that was the core of the game. And then what happened later on, I was working on a big cave level. So there's a path that's slowly winding up the top of a cave. And
Yes.
the first version of this level, there was a single path that went basically continuously upwards. And I was playing it, and I hadn't put in the kill boxes yet. And I think I just felt it was really hard. It was like I've made it way too hard. I need to play it a couple of times and sort of fix it up. But I fell down, and I didn't fall to the bottom of the cave. I just fell onto a different. I think I fell back onto an earlier version of the path, and I was like, "Oh, this is so much more fun than dying." Right? And so what happened then was instead of necessarily making the path easier, I just kept on playing through the level. And whenever I accidentally fell off a platform, I'm like, oh, this is where I fell. I'm putting another alternative path here. So if you fall down, it catches you and you get to keep playing. Maybe it eventually connects back up to the main path. And this was so much more fun to play than just splatting and dying for me. So I was like, I'm gonna have to abandon this core paradigm, the thing that makes an egg like most eggy for most people. I'm going to sacrifice it in the name of fun.
Hey, and you know what? This is actually a great segue because something that I wanted to talk to you about having made a 3D platformer that isn't necessarily hard, but definitely isn't easy. Like you got to get your lay of the land as you're playing the game. I'm curious about your approach to encouraging players to keep playing because, as you said, sometimes you got to make decisions in the name of fun rather than like the name of the original vision. And something that I noticed between both your game and Egging On, especially actually having played both, was the way that y'all approach checkpoints and no checkpoints. And like the phrase you just used, catching the player and like letting them try a different way, is something that was big in both of your games. With egging on, even though there's no checkpoints in egging on, once you reach certain points, most of the falls, unless you have like a miraculous mess up, you will land somewhere within a certain area. You're not literally starting all the way from the bottom. Whereas with yours, there were checkpoints, but there were even ways like that cave level you just mentioned. I would fall and I'd be like, oh my god, wait, there's like two or three other ways for me to get back up here. So, can you walk me through that process of how do you approach even designing multiple ways to go back up, and how much of a consideration do you make in making it easier for people to restart and like encouraging to continue? How much is that factored in when you're designing these levels?
All right. So let me have a think. So I've played lots of Roblox games in the past couple of years with friends. Really like it. Very pro Roblox. Enjoy the platformers a lot. Lots of really good design. And one of the standard genres is the obby genre, the obstacle course, where you have a series of maybe like 100 or 200 small platforming challenges with very regular checkpoints. So it's maybe like, you have like, I included an obby in the game in Oeuf as an optional level, but you'll have like hop hop. You're at a checkpoint, you do hop hop hop, and you're at another checkpoint straight away. And you can make it hard or you can make it easy, but it's a really nice structure. And so when I was making my game, I was like, do I want to do this? And then I was thinking, well, okay, the other game that was in my head was Abyss World, and that tends to have very far apart checkpoints. And if checkpoints are far apart, then you have this journey, this feeling of having a journey, and you can do lots of gags. Like you start to think of, how am I going to structure this? And one thing that I tried to avoid was right after a checkpoint having like a difficult jump or a difficult section, because if you have a difficult jump or a difficult section, people will just YOLO it, right? You just just
Mm-hmm.
just try to just flash it, and if it doesn't work out, hit restart. And so it was for me very interesting just to try and structure things between checkpoints. They're sometimes quite far apart, and sometimes that's a gag, right? I try to not have like, if checkpoints are far apart, maybe the last section should be pretty chill, but even if it is pretty chill, it can still be pretty nerve wracking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so I was thinking a lot about that. And some people did ask for more frequent checkpoints, and I did think about that, but I was really under the spell of having this adventure, and you can get like the obby pacing of like regular checkpoints is really fun. You can make progress quite readily. You can still have difficulty, but I like the idea of going on an adventure, and you don't have that with very regular checkpoints. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and as you said, with egging on, they do this really well. Egging on do a bunch of things really well. They handle cracking really well. Right, cracking doesn't kill you. It can ruin your day indirectly for people who haven't played it. And egging on, you have this. I don't think it's hard coded. If you hit a surface with velocity, you crack. You splat. You turn into this amorphous egg. You can still move a little bit, and in a couple of seconds, your shell regenerates and you're an egg again. And the main slapstick consequence of this is that you don't have very good control, so you'll end up like sliding down. Or if there's like a tiny gap between beams, you're smaller, so you'll slide between the beams. It's really good. I'm a big fan of that. And I did a little bit of that with what I was calling like soft checkpoints, where if you fall down, you land on land and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something I used sort of to try and keep things balanced. So you can have maybe areas that are more or less difficult, and areas that are, if you fall and you fail, you're still okay.
Gotcha.
Um,
That makes sense. And I'm curious because you mentioned it multiple times now. Rare, or maybe not necessarily rare, but Roblox, when I'm often reporting on it on my side of things, isn't always in the most positive light. But this is like the most pro Roblox chat I've had in ages. So I'm gonna use the opportunity to ask you a little bit
yeah,
about it since it inspired this game directly. What
yeah.
is, from like your standpoint as a game developer, to seeing like for Roblox, where you're saying that it's actually got quite a few good games to take inspiration from for 3D platformers? Is it like there's quite a few of them and like you are having a hard time picking one, or is it like, oh, there's a lot of like rough work, but then every now and then there's like a real gem that you're like, there's some really cool here, let's see how we can explore with this concept?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people have taken a negative tack on Roblox. I really like it. It's like kids are making, so there's lots of like terrible games, but it has, when I'm playing with friends, it has the same feeling of like playing like flash games, where like the the cost of testing out a game. It's like you click on a button, you test out the game. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you just try another game. And there's like thousands and thousands of games. And there's also, if you're playing with friends, then the threshold for fun, a game doesn't need to be this much good to be fun. It just needs to be this much good. So
Mm.
um, there's that, and also just we found genuinely like really amazing top tier wonderful games and people trying stuff out. And some of this is going to be because you've kids that are doing things and they're doing new things and they get sucked into their own rabbit holes and they have their own conventions that develop. And like the whole the obby format that I was talking about, that's I think pretty much unique to Roblox. And it was really, when I tried to make one as an add-on level for my own game, it was like I placed down 100 checkpoints on a grid, and I was like, now I just have to make a little course that goes between them. And it was like the most satisfying level design exercise maybe I've ever had.
Okay.
It was really wonderful. So there's lots of cool things that are happening, and now you're seeing some stuff go onto Steam, and I'm like, oh, that's just why are people on Steam like getting inspiration from the Roblox games I don't like rather than the Roblox games I do like. Like there's a lot of these like group games with physics, and I would think that I should like that, but I often I bounce off them really hard. Maybe they're a bit too esoteric, or they rely on like maybe you need to give them more time. Like there was the climbing one, which I played, and I had such a bad time with it. I got really frustrated, and maybe you just need to put in like time with a more dedicated group. Um, but yeah,
No, thanks.
eventually, I hope the more Roblox platforming will take off on Steam because I really
Big
enjoy
fan
that.
like
That's what I
that.
like about Roblox. And you have all these like the games that people complain about, and you can just not play them. There's lots of other games.
It's good to hear. Thanks for the take on that. Yeah, no, Roblox, it's just interesting thing in the gaming space. Just like because I'm a journalist and I have like a lot of press friends. Most of the time, we're talking about like the safeguards around Roblox and just that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. The way you're talking about it, you're kind of making it sound like from a game development standpoint, it's a bit of a dream in terms of just trying stuff out, seeing what like the younger generation's thinking of. And would you say it's because of the low barrier to entry with Roblox, since it's like just you can get it on pretty much anything, and to my knowledge has like pretty easy to use level design tools? Like what's your experience there in terms of like
Yeah.
what you might find when people are just starting out with game development, what kind of tools they're using?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not that easy to use the editor. It's kind of like in the direction of Unity. It's not like you put together a Minecraft like a world in Minecraft, and then you put your things in.
Right.
It's not that easy. Um, but I guess the thing with multiplayer games is that you need like if you have this big network of players, then things can catch off really quickly. Um, it's one of those things nowadays where it's quite difficult if you release a game to get eyes on it and to get people playing it.
Right.
Right? You can release a game on Steam, and then you're one game amongst whatever 20,000 a year, 30,000 games a year. The other web gaming sites are kind of they're not really there. And if that's even for if you're doing a single player game, it's hard to get eyes on it. And if you're doing a multiplayer game, it's like you need lots of like you need people. You don't need just like one person lots of times. You need lots of people. And so Roblox kind of offers that, but it's not easy to use. It's not that easy to use. So it's all the
Interesting.
more impressive that people are doing things. Um, yeah. So, and I don't understand. Like kids of friends of mine play it, but yeah, it's difficult to get a. I guess if you're in a bubble and everyone's in some kind of bubble, you don't really have an idea of how enormous these things can be. And maybe people will eventually age out of Roblox, but yeah, it's still good.
Interesting. Thanks for the take. Thanks for entertaining that detour. um, but yeah, to go back briefly to Oof specifically, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of elaborate on some more, specifically taking into account the shape of an egg, the shape of anything when you're using a platformer. I'd love to hear about your thought process and taking into account how much that should actually have an impact on the 3D space you're working in. To give people some context, for example, Terry's egg, like you said, is a bit more of like a launch mechanic in the way that you move around. His egg is kind of just more like hobbling around, like it's like almost walking. Whereas yours is very much rolling. You like build momentum for certain jumps in your game, and then egging on, you literally have to take into account the end of the egg that you're on for how high the jump is. So like, there's a lot of different ways that people are coming to that approach and how they're even factoring in that shape. So I'm curious for Oof, what was your thinking there? And even more generally, what are your thoughts on how much the shape of a playable character should impact and interact with its environment per se?
Aha. So one thing I learned is there's something which you can very easily buy online, and that is wooden replica eggs
Ooh,
for people with chickens. I think you can just like put them around, and then chickens are all like, ah, that's where I should put my nest because there's eggs here.
that is cool as
Um,
hell. I
so
don't
you
think I
can
knew
use it
that.
as a prop. So yeah, I guess Terry's egg game doesn't deal with the shape of an egg that precisely, right? It's an egg as a character. Playing Egging On was amazing for me because I spent so long thinking about eggs, and there's all of these like dilemmas that happen, like where I'm designing it, and I'm like, should I go in this direction or should I go in this direction? And in like about 10 different places, Egging On people, I was like, oh, they had the same problem, and they just went here. I went here, and they went here. And so one thing, and it was suggested to me, I think before anything about Egging On came out, was people had said, right, if you're rolling, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I jump from my tip? Will I jump higher? Right? People independently were asking this, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that because for me, if you're an egg, it's very easy to roll this way along the ground. It's
Right.
if you're physically, this is a very unstable motion. It's actually kind of in my game. It also is the case that it's actually very difficult to just stand on your tip. It's very unstable. It doesn't want to stay there. So I was like, I don't want to go near that. I don't want to go near that. This is so if I was to implement jumping on your tip, causing you to jump higher, or if I was trying to like tweak the physics so that it was meaningfully different, this would be a very difficult manipulation for people to do. Playing Egging On, I don't know what kind of shenanigans they do, but your default movement is like a bumble. You're bumbling
Yes.
forward, and they make it very easy to stand upright. And I was like, ah, they have tweaked the physics either for maybe two reasons. One, because this bumbling thing is fun, it makes going in a straight line very difficult. Or two, that this is to allow you to reliably be able to jump on your tip. And that was it's really fun to see that there's like this sort of system of things and things that follow come out from this. And I don't know what order the Egging On people like decide made the decisions in, but that was very cool. And for me, I like this. I guess I was going kind of slow, more deliberate pacing in the game than Egging On, which is quite fast. But even then, one of the things that they also do, it happens quite regularly egging on, is that you just like save yourself by a tip, and then
Yes.
you can like lever yourself up. You're doing that all the time. It's really satisfying. In my game, the physics don't really allow for that in that same way. I think because I mean, if you're like this, you're gonna fall. Like this, you can't rescue. In some version of physics, you can't rescue yourself if you're like this, right? You're just gonna fall down. So they've done something to allow you to do this. I think that would be my guess. I think this is something where they've like tweaked the physics to allow for this, and it's very satisfying. And at one point, I tried out a version of the game. I replaced the egg with a cube, and then it was magically possible to do this all the time. So there's some sort of
Mm,
random physics parameter, and if I found the right one, I would be able to do this. But that would probably break a bunch of other things. So you're
right.
tweaking parameters. You're very much. It's very difficult, I think, to be a agent to be able to direct a physics engine with like omnisciently because you're trying to tweak parameters and you try to do this so you can like my main concern was I don't want you to be able to jump over a 2 block wall, right? I was
Okay.
like, whatever I do, this is my design. I cannot design levels if I don't know, like, you can't jump over this. I have to be able to know this. So I was trying to tweak all of these things, and yeah, that was uh that was fun.
Oh, thank you for answering that. Now I'm also curious because now that we're talking about the physics differences between egg and yon and egg, for people that don't really spend a lot of time interacting with physics engines, which what I would assume would actually be most people that play games, what's something that people underestimate about them when it comes to building them and then actualizing their vision in a game? Or even in your case, what ended up being the hardest thing to work with in the physics engine for getting your vision of Oof together?
Um, Oh gosh, there were a bunch of performance optimizations to do with. Um, Let me have a think now. Like I spent a lot of time tweaking the physics. I just wanted to get it to feel right if you're moving. Like I did slope block, right? I have these slopes, and I was like, I want it to be as fun as possible to move up the slope. So I spent like whatever a couple of days or a couple of weeks trying to tune it, trying to get the jump height right, the jump like curves looking good, the and then I did it. And now here's the problem: I can't tweak these values. Like it's all based on feel and stuff, so it's very difficult later on for me to change this because I don't know what I'm like. I could be like, oh, maybe I should change the jump height a bit, but then I need to reconsider everything else, right? And it's basically impossible to do that. And so, like switching the physics engine, I realized that the physics engine I was using in the game is now it's still supported, but it's been like put on the back shelf, and it'll eventually disappear from Godot, the game engine I'm using. So I was like, well, I could try and update the physics engine, but then that would change the feel, and there's no real way of like I can't judge in code if it's better or not. I would just have to play the bejesus out of it, and even then, I wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. It'd be basically impossible to tune. So that's probably the for me the hardest thing. That it's all feel based and not so much like I don't have like a list of laws or a list of rules, and I just need to get it to do those rules. For me, that's the trickiest part. But it also means that you get to tune things by feel, which is fun.
Yeah, I can imagine because feel is such an abstract term. Like it's very subjective and it ultimately comes down to your own tolerance too, which is also curious. How much were you playtesting Oof beforehand? Because again, with feel and something like that, I wonder how you avoid making sure it's not just what's comfortable for you, but then what actually would be comfortable for a player who would maybe just see this on a Steam store and be like, "Oh, this looks cool. Let me pick this up on a whim."
Yeah. I did lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of playtesting, and nowadays it's much easier. Like earlier on in the early on in the history of the universe, when people do playtesting, they'll send you notes. Nowadays, people can reasonably easy just record a whole video of a session and then leave comments on top, and just watching hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of playthroughs. And sometimes you're watching a playthrough thinking, okay, what can I learn from this? And sometimes it's like a bit of uh like paying penance where you're like, I know that people are going to suffer, I know that people are going to have a bad time. I mean, I'm doing my best so that people don't have a bad time, but watching somebody have a bad time is sort of part of it's my it is sort of like how do you say this, like paying uh
Paying
it's not like karmic retribution, but it's like doing this in advance, right? Where you're like, I know that you're having a bad time. I've seen people have a bad time. I get it. I am willing to, despite this, stand behind this game that I've made. I won't pretend like, oh, I didn't know you were having a bad time. It's like, no, I've seen people have a bad time. Um, and that's like it's difficult. And I've spoke with another developer who works on these games as well, these kinds of games, rage sort of difficult games, and he's like, I find it really difficult to watch playtesting video because my instinct is always to make things easier whenever people struggle. Like it's like I don't want people. I don't. It's emotionally very difficult, right? To watch people struggle, and you're like, I want to tweak it. But then if you keep on doing this for everyone, the game ends up just being like probably. I mean, if you're you can try and design around a lot of things, but yeah, it's difficult if you start sort of yeah, try to please everyone. It's difficult as
Yeah,
well.
difficult to like see. You want people to play your game and to get through it, but you're also like you don't want to sacrifice. And like, correct me if these are the wrong words to use, but sacrifice your vision of like, oh, I do want a certain level of difficulty to still be at the base level for it. Which
Yeah.
now, one more question actually to follow up to that. With your games or just like other games you've worked on with other people, how do you guys think about difficulty level when it comes to building out a game generally? Like, do you think in terms of creating different options like easy, medium, hard in that traditional sense? Do you find ways to naturally include difficulty in the game so it's not necessarily an option that you like do within the menu, but you're like, oh, here's one way to get up this path. Here's a harder way to get up this path if you want. What's your thinking there?
Um. Okay. Where do I go when I'm thinking about this? I think of say there's a lot of games that I like a lot of puzzle games that I like the most. That I Many of the games that I like the most I haven't finished. So for me, giving up is okay. Being all like, I'm done with this game before the end. Psychologically, for me, that doesn't mean that people don't that it isn't somebody's favorite game. So, I mean, if this is happening right at the start, then it's not
A
great.
little different there, but
Um,
yeah.
but in general, I'm okay with that, and also I'm okay with people deciding early on that they don't like a game. I'm okay with that. I had some great feedback from somebody. So in the game world, you start off in a basement, and you get out of the basement, and you're looking around, and there's a big cave, or there's a big mountain up here. There's some city over here, and then if you look backwards, you get this sort of spiraling or geometry like floating in the air, and I'm not I'm a little bit unhappy with how that ended up looking. It's a like all of these 3D physics games. There's a lot of them which end up doing like the just you're climbing up like stuff floating in the air, and I have really bad associations with this by this stage because it's like you can do it and it's just chaotic objects floating in the air and you're like, oh, it's going to be another it's another hard platformer. If I fall down and die, it's going to be no fun. I'll
Mm.
just get frustrated, and immediately it just triggers like a negative, a bunch of like network of negative associations when I see this in a game. However, in my game, the stuff floating in the air is the route back down, and it's actually a fun route, right? It's basically like chill, and um, and so a friend was all like, "Oh yeah, I saw this." Like I just heard him in the video, and he was just like, "Oh god, it's one of these games." I think he was already like worried about the physics, and then he saw this, and I was like, "Oh god, I have to climb up there." And in my brain, when I was watching the video, I was like, "No, no, you don't." And then I was talking with him, and I was like, I was trying to restructure it so that you wouldn't see this, right? So that it would
Mhm.
be like more integrated into the landscape. And he's like, well, don't you think it's more honest to the players to show them this at the start?
Okay.
I think he was slightly angry when he was getting this
Interesting.
feedback, and I was like, God.
More
It was very
honest.
good. It was good though.
Wow. That is an interesting way to give feedback, which now makes I have to ask this question to you now after hearing that. How honest does a game developer even have to be with the player when they're making a game?
Um, I'm trying to think of when games have actually bamboozled me. I think most games you kind of know what you're in for. Quite like I'm trying. What games like do a
I can actually give a very quick example
yeah?
without spoiling too much of a recent hard, difficult platformer that came out was Love Eternal. And I big fan of that game. A 2D platformer has some clear inspiration from like Celeste and as you mentioned, Terry's V. Hopefully I said in the V's there. But has like a very big narrative focus as well. Like there's a very underlining horror almost mystery thing going on. That game goes in places that I would have never predicted based on any trailer I would have seen. Like there is like some not even like borderline. There's like some hard genre switches in the game in and of itself. That I won't spoil here because I think people should go look at it yourself.
Oh.
Spoil it yourself if you want to. But that is a moment to me where the game I won't even necessarily call it lying or bamboozled, but it was clear that there's no way you could have known this unless you played. And playing that game isn't easy. Like there's a lot of people who I can imagine starting that game and never getting to some of the other surprises because they bounced off of the difficulty or just like are taking a longer time to get through the difficult parts. So that's why it's interesting to me because I'm in those moments I'm like, well, that's not a bad thing at all. I think Love Eternal will still be high on my list when I finish the year off with just games that I've liked. But there's definitely a level of interesting stuff going on that no one will ever see that the game won't tell you is going on unless you go through a trial of fire, basically. Um, and so from that perspective, I'm like, that's necessarily bamboozling, but you're definitely not having the full game shown to you in a way where you can reasonably expect how it even progresses.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like. Oh, this is a very so. I'm thinking. Have I? I'm trying to think of any other. So yeah, there's this thing where a game does like well, it's like it's very like exuberant. There's lots of stuff and it goes places and maybe it does several things well. And it's one of these things when I think of doing a game like that, I'm all like, let's do this. Let's pretend to be this, but let's actually be this. And then really, it's really difficult because it's like, oh, but I have this has to be good, and then for this to be good, and then to do like the other thing, it's so hard. It's so hard, and I've tried to do that maybe a few times, but it's a I guess it's a virtuosic thing to be able to do. Um, but yeah, have I ever felt like with regards to the gameplay that the gameplay is, oh, okay, maybe this has happened, that I've played a game and then the gameplay just goes in a direction I'm like, oh man, this isn't what I was expecting. What is there? There's some pixel. It's like a voxel based destruction game, and there was released recently a multiplayer version done. And the first couple of levels are break-in levels. So you're going, you're destroying things, and then you do
Okay.
a run where you try to get in, capture the whatever you're trying to steal, and get out in time. And when I was looking at this, then the first two levels I think are this. It's like this really cool open world sort of thievery break-in thing where you're trying to like cut these wires, do these things, and then the second part is you're trying to escape. And really great fun. And then I got to level 3, and then suddenly, oh, it's a speedrunning game. You're trying to set up like the perfect course for your speed run and get out, and that's the main focus. And I was like, oh god, I can understand
Interesting.
how the game mechanics would get you to here, but I'm done. I can't. I'm done. I don't want to play this. So yeah, I think this would be an example of something where the game, I don't want to say misadvertised itself. It wasn't what I was expecting, but also it's exactly the sort of thing that happens when you're developing a game and then you realize, oh, this is what actually these mechanics entail, and this is probably the best thing for me to do with it.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that was an interesting line of questioning too here because yeah, that's something I feel like I always go back and forth on with just like any medium, even outside of games, of just like how much honesty does the creator need to give the audience, and what is that dishonesty in that case even serving? Because even the example that you just used, it's not that even you didn't call it a bad choice, you just realized it wasn't for you anymore, and those are two different things. So it's interesting how much that like can land with people. Yeah. But thanks for sharing all this. I know we're kind of hitting a bit of time, but I'd love to ask two more questions. Even
Okay.
just broadening out past Oof, I'd love to hear just like some of your favorite platformers in general. I remember you were excited to talk about platformers even outside of Oof, and we had talked a little bit on Blue Sky. So I'm curious to just some that you really enjoy playing, come back to, or always suggest people check out when you get a chance to talk about them, 3D or otherwise.
So yeah, the one last year that I was under the spell of was Abyss World, which is in Roblox, and it does the thing of having like long stretches between checkpoints and just having an adventure. It's this world that looks really beautiful. I think it's semi inspired by this Abyss anime, Deep in Abyss or something, about a little girl who's descending
Oh
to the
yes,
bottomless
I know
abyss.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Oh my god, what is that show actually called?
has a weird.
I'll
The
find that
grammar
later.
is weird.
Yeah, I thought
Made
Abyss
in
and Zero
Abyss.
Made in Abyss. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So the world is broadly, I think, inspired by that, and the different zones are inspired by that, and it feels so good. Um, Other 3D platformers. This is like, it's such a weird world. I'm not like a 3D like, I play Roblox all the time, therefore I am like I like 3D platformers. But what are the other outside of that? Like, one plays Mario, and before I was working on the Egg game with the same engine, I was trying to work on a 3D platformer, and I was like, what kind of platforming feel do I like? And I did the systematically like record the videos of the jumping and all of the 3D platformers I can think of, and it's mostly going to be like N64 generation stuff. For later things, not even sure what I've played. It's I guess that you get modern things like It Takes Two, right? Did you
Yeah,
play
that's
this?
true.
Yeah, it was really impressive. It's just big. It's so big and so like they stuffed so many things into it. I was playing it with a friend. We got together and we didn't realize it would be like a 6 month affair to
No,
get
that's
through it.
It Takes Two is one that I meant to play. That studio's like I know their platforming stuff is like great. I need to get to it because it's been on my radar, but I just need to sit down with someone to play those games with. And I had
Yeah,
someone before, but we pivoted things, so I still have to get to that.
yeah. So that sort of stuff is good. But yeah, I guess in my heart, I don't have like a an encyclopedic like, not like I've played lots of puzzle games. I've played lots and lots of puzzle games and lots of different genres, modern ones and older ones. For 3D platformers, I guess I'm a little more limited. Um, like I've played the games that lots of people have played. I okay, last year I did. Does baby steps count? I really like baby
Yeah,
steps.
why not? Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's a weird
If
one.
it's what came to mind,
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
yeah. I had I got really frustrated. I think. Have you played it to the
I
end
have
or?
not played it to the end. No, I was able to. I remember playing the demo, and then I'm trying to remember. If I even played a little bit after the demo, but no, I do. I'm familiar with the basic ways of which it works.
Yeah. I had this basic idea that it would be like a bit more open world and that I could choose where I went. But then there's one point in the game where there's basically a bottleneck, and I didn't realize that I didn't notice there was a door here, and I spent like hours and hours trying to climb a wall way over here. And I was just like, oh, this is terrible. This is really bad. I'm getting really frustrated. I had this image that this game was a bit free, but it wants me to do this thing that's impossible. And then eventually, I just looked up like hints, and I was like, okay, I have to go through this hole. And then it actually opened up a lot more. And then that was, I guess, just by chance I missed the door, and it was bad. But then from then, it actually did feel a lot more open.
Oh,
Though
nice.
I'm not a big fan of the structure of like you have all these little challenges that you can do yourself. And I think I would have preferred a structure where it's more like branching, where you get to choose different routes to take to the end goal.
Oh, okay.
But just being like there's a side challenge, you can do it, and then you go back to the main route. Is there is a lot there's a lot of that, and it doesn't that part of it didn't hang together, but it did. The game generally, I really liked it, and it was very very wholesome. Like the second half or the second two thirds lived up to my expectations of
Nice.
it. That's one that I've played a lot, and actually, somebody did a multiplayer mod of that,
Oh,
which
really?
was
I did not. Oh,
yeah.
okay. I did not know this.
And that was really fun. It's like you're going hiking with friends, and the friends actually know where the secrets are and stuff, and they're all like, "Oh, hey, come, let's go get this trophy." And it was really fun, and that was actually directly the inspiration for me adding multiplayer to Oof,
Oh, okay,
because
cool.
it was just so much fun just going around with a small troop of people. And I guess I've played Roblox, so I've seen that you can do this. Well, I guess with Roblox, the thing of playing multiplayer is you just see lots of other people around the world doing their own things. Whereas for me, if I'm making a game, I don't know that there's going to be a big audience of people playing it, right? So you can't rely on that. But if you just see this thing like in Baby Steps with like a group of people going on a trip, and even though there's no proper multiplayer mechanics, it was still a lot of fun. So that was like, yeah, okay, I have to do that, and it was really worth it.
Nice. Good to hear.
Yeah. What 3D platformers would you think I should play? Or would you what are big for you? Like if you
Oh,
think back.
okay. There's obviously some of the Nintendo ones like Super Mario Odyssey I think was awesome, but honestly, my community knows when it comes to 3D platforms, one of my favorites ever from the PS2 to the remake that came out for like the PS4 and above is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. When I say that is
Oh,
probably one of the most underrated 3D platform, or I'm not even sure if it's underrated because every single time I bring it up, people like a light bulb goes off in their head. There is just something about the way that they designed the levels in that game for not just exploration, but actually requiring some level of skill while realizing this world that you're familiar with from being a kid, but like taking it in directions that you just don't expect. It's not like one of those, oh, hop in kids game makes it easy. It's like, oh no, I need to understand how to like surf on SpongeBob's tongue. I need to understand how to lasso with Sandy's lasso and actually make these swings correctly. And like involves like some level of like a little bit of combat too, depending because I think with Battle for Bikini Bottom the whole situation is robots are taking over the space, so you're also having to like battle robots and have real boss battles that require some level of dexterity and challenge to make your way through it. It's just really impressive. It's one of the games where I'm like, if you show this to someone, I feel like most of them will be like, oh, SpongeBob game, what's going on there? And then you play it and you're like, no, this is actually kind of one of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. I will stand by that game for a while. I've played the PS2 one and I played the rehydrated version that's made by the studio Purple Lamp recently too, or at least within the last couple of years.
cool. I will definitely try this out because I need to make a new game at some point, and I'll go back to the old platform game that I was working on, but having worked on a physics platformer for a year, and it having been a bunch of fun, I'm like, maybe I should make another physics platformer, but maybe I need like a palette cleanse. Maybe I need to just play some normal 3D platform games for a while. So I will definitely check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good one. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that would come up the top of my head. I liked Astrobot too. Was a big fan of Astrobot
Mm.
from for the PS5. Although I do think in terms of like the best parts of that game, I think it's always the Lost Galaxy parts. They have. Have you played Astrobot before?
I played like for 30 seconds. Like the
Okay.
original one, it comes from like a PlayStation like demo disc essentially,
Yeah,
right?
basically, yeah. Astro's Playroom for PS5 was like a big hit with people, and they were like, I guess the team used that almost as not a playtest, but like as a proof of concept, basically, like, oh, this is what we can
Hmm.
do. And then the full game came out, and it was a joy to play. I really like Astrobot, but the way Astrobot's constructed is interesting in that the main levels kind of take you like world by world until you meet like whatever characters at the end, and like you do this specialized world where you have a ability briefly attached to the character, like with God of War, you got to use like Kratos' axe a little bit. With Nathan Drake's Uncharted, you got to do like a little bit of a shooting mechanic. All fun and good. The best level designs in Astrobot are the Lost Galaxy things. Like there's these little hidden parts within Astrobot in a world where you can like, oh, get transported to a different world all of a sudden and do a completely different level. And the things that are occurring in those levels are really fun. Like there's
Ah,
just something about the way that they're designed where it's like, oh, you are no longer really thinking about the character that these people have to find. You're just trying to make a really good level. And they do. There's this one that's called it's like something in Goblins, and I can't remember, but like in the middle of the level, it turns into like a carnival shooter game all of a sudden as you're trying to like create the platforms for
yeah.
yourself. When I played that, it felt like a draw. I was like, oh my god, I'm having so much fun again. Like this is great, and I think it's in those levels where you find some of the best of not just Astrobot but 3D platforming in the way that being able to change an environment can like make it just magical in your eyes all of a sudden
Yeah.
because you have some level of input in changing the environment yourself, and so it feels like you're doing all these things that make you feel cool that the developer definitely planned for making you feel cool, but
Yeah.
because of the way it's happening and the way it's being unraveled rather than like immediately revealed to you, it just leaves a longer impression with me. So that's why I love those sections especially from Astrobot.
Nice. I had one interesting bit of feedback from somebody who was playing my game during testing. You start off the game, you're going up like to the top of a hut, and then there's a ramp down into a church, into the basement. There's just this big long ramp, and there was a player who was all like, when he was starting off, he's like, mm, sort of playing but not really into it. And then he got to the ramp and he was all like, "Oh, great! I thought you'd be one of these developers that just has everything try to fit in world. Seeing some sort of abstract shapes, I'm really into this now. Now that I know that you're not just trying to like fit something into the to look realistic. I love this stuff." And I was like, "That's completely not a reaction I would have expected. This would be a
Interesting
positive
feedback.
signal."
Nice.
But also what you were saying about like when you go like when you see the designers are able to be really exuberant, just like try out ideas in an unconstrained way. I absolutely get that that can be a lot of fun, and it's nice to see. I mean, you feel that the designers had fun with this as well, right? When you're playing
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
it's always good.
Yeah. Well, we're about to pretty much close out here in a second.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing your time, Stephen. I just have one last question for you. That's a question I've
yeah.
had to ask since you when you talked about eggs before this interview. How do you like having your eggs?
Oh, going through all the options. Poached is fine, but you need the knack for it, and I lose the knack, so then I can't do it
Mm,
reliably. I just with eggy water. Fried eggs, our frying pans aren't as good as they should be. Um, Boiled eggs, then it's like you have to peel them, and that's
yeah.
um. But there's a correct answer. I'm going to go with
There's a correct answer.
I'm going to go
Okay.
with fried eggs. It's
Fried eggs? Okay.
fried eggs. Our pans are stickier than they need to be, so it's a bit annoying. But yeah, let's go with fried eggs.
Fried eggs. There we go. All right. Thank you so much again,
All
Stephen.
right, it's
And
great
before we
chatting.
head out, where can people find you?
People can find me on increpare.com and anything increpare. So on Blue Sky, Twitter, website. I'm on Twitch also, do lots of streaming. It's lots of fun. And yeah, that's where I am.
Awesome. Thanks for your time again today.
All right. It's great chatting.
And
See
chatting.
you. Have a lovely day.
See ya.